Hi, welcome to part 2 of Lecture 8. And the focus of this lecture is really simple. I'm hoping that I'm able to provide you with some tips and guidance on wrapping up your teacher evaluations, which actually serves as an opportunity for you to wrap up the rest of your year in regards to how you formulate your reflective process. So there are two things that I've added to this lecture which were not originally added. So the modification is a very easy one. I wanted to add some brief lectures, um, or I wanted to add some brief articles that are like tip sheets to this lecture. The first one is tips for an excellent teacher evaluation, and then the reading two is your teacher evaluation didn't go well, now what? So it kind of gives you pre and post activities to do, and between the two of these, they summarize everything that I've learned to do with the teacher evaluation process. So I'll show you the first source and then the second one. So this one, the reason why I selected these is because they're teacher friendly and they come from a voice of a teacher and just giving feedback. One of them is written by an instructional coach, and this one is written as a resource for teachers overall. So you should find this to be really useful to you. And then the other one is the one written by the instructional coach. Your teacher evaluation didn't go well, now what? So these are actually in this form as a printable document because they are from blogs or websites online. So enjoy them. But this lecture is split up into this process. So keep in mind a couple of things. The evaluation process is meant for growth and development. Although sometimes the results feel misguided and also like judgment, the intentions behind the scope of examination is to improve student outcomes through growth of effective teaching approaches. I know that from my previous experiences, and I've been assessed 6 through 12 grades in two different states, actually three, and the process is still the same. And the results of the process are sometimes have been in previous thoughts very debilitating. And to me, the experience started when I was doing my student teaching, where it just felt like it was too much of a burden to process all the different things that I was told I needed to work on and things that I really wasn't good at the time. So I think sometimes the evaluation process comes off as something that's not beneficial because sometimes it is looked at as a negative viewpoint. However, it is supposed to be a place for you to grow and develop. So the first tip I have for you is to listen to feedback. So one of the things I started to do was to separate my emotions from the actual observation. And sometimes that means that you may have to take a breath, to step back. Other times it might mean you may have to ask for a different meeting day. If you can't ask for those things, then maybe debriefing and taking a step back an hour before the meeting would be a great thing. For some of you, that might be a good cry. For others of you, that might be a great scream. And for some of you, it may mean that, you've done extremely well and a pat on the back for yourself. But I say to debrief regardless of the results of the evaluation. And I'm not saying all my evaluations were negative. I just had I had experiences with negative, what I perceived as negative feedback that I wouldn't want anyone to walk away from. It was important for me to kind of grow in that area as an educator and get used to people evaluating me and taking that as constructive criticism, even if it was not necessarily presented in a way that was constructive to me. My goal is always to find the constructiveness in the feedback that's presented to me. So trying to separate my emotions is a process that I do because when I'm emotional, I can't think about what's being said and process it. I can only my emotion kind of serves as a filter and a blocker. So my advice for you to separate your emotions from the actual observation means that to kind of put things into perspective, give yourself a moment, unless the meeting's right after, then ask, can I meet you in your office in a few minutes? I just have to go to the restroom. Or if you can schedule the post-observation conversation a day after, that works. But it's good to debrief and kind of think about the process prior to having a conversation. The article says, the first one I showed you, like we said earlier, the only part of making a mistake that really matters is the way that you learn and grow as a result. So say, for example, you actually do have a horrible lesson. We've all had it. We will continue to have days where we're off. The truth part of it is that it can result to growth. It's just how you look at it. So if your school uses a walkthrough process, use those as a guide to prepare for the actual observation, because sometimes they pinpoint what they're looking for. I remember one year I literally had observations, walkthroughs back to back to back. And I have been teaching for 3 years and it still didn't really matter. That's the process that they followed. So from that, I learned how to integrate, natural response to people walking in a room. I used to become very terrified. And then the debrief would escalate that terror. And then it would just be like, I didn't eat all day and I'm surprised I didn't get an ulcer or something because it was so bad. So make sure that you're able to listen to the feedback and you're in a place to actually receive it, meaning separate the emotions and then allow yourself to process in a pace that is comfortable for you, if it's available. If not, go to the restroom, scream a little bit, and then meet your supervisor in their office if it's possible. Stay reasonable. So sometimes we have a hard time seeing the mistakes of the things that we do or things that are not going well. So it says here, if your poor evaluation is a result of a mistake or a misunderstanding, you can always explain yourself. And this is where the tips that come later in regards to you having your evaluation process set up are really important. So it says the most important thing is that you learn from the negative evaluation instead of letting your emotions result in a rash decision, like posting a strongly worded open letter to your school principal online. So I'll share with you that, and this has never happened to me because I actually deactivate my Facebook account during the year. I've heard some really horrible stories of things that have happened to teachers, really good teachers, that I don't think is fair. And I don't really like people to monitor me on my social life. Not that I have a whole lot of things going on, but I like the idea that if I am posting something that is private to me, and that is not the case when you're an educator. They kind of explain that to you, and some of you may have forgotten this along the way, that they do have a team that looks over your social media accounts when you first come in, and then it's open season, if one of your students sees it or one of your students' parents. So unless you have the private settings really set, like high set, within regards to security, you want to make sure that you're not saying anything that will tie you to your school. And that's just to protect your job, because you don't want a moment of anger to take away a lifetime of a great career. So just keep in mind, and I've actually seen this happen before, where teachers are reading, they're friends with teachers and they're reading their posts, and then they're sharing private conversations that the other person had in their posts and on their private social media page. That was stated about something that happened at school. So just a rule of thumb, be sure that whatever you do post is not in a direct response to one of your evaluations or evaluation that day. Not that there's anything wrong with posting your freedom of expression, but the challenge is that human response to that is not always predictable, so it's just best to be safe than sorry. Explain yourself. So this is where the reflective process comes in. If you're reflecting throughout the entire year, you should have your data, you should have your artifacts, and this should be easier for you. One of the things I used to do was kind of shut down after I had a very long day. I have this evaluation, and then I have the post-evaluation conversation. I would be done. So at that point, my brain would be frazzled, and it wasn't always easy for me to think of all the wonderful things I had done. And I would just be at a point where wherever they said, I would be like, sure, fine, whatever. I'm over it. So I recommend strongly that you have these things in place this summer. So then once you start the year again, even if you don't have this struggle where you have to find like race defying reasons for what you did or what you didn't do, this systematic approach can help you. The reflective process, it helps you to be able to build your data and your artifacts and everything you need along the way, so you don't have to scramble. When you're explaining, especially if you have the reflective process set up, refer to your reflective process in your binder, or your digital, assets that you have, and include the goal alignment process you created at the end of the previous school year. So now you're using data, and that's one of the things that evaluators love, is the use of data. Complete a self-reflection for each quarter, semester, or unit that includes walkthrough feedback and student surveys. Also include feedback from parents. Having the multiple perspectives gives you a leg up, because when you explain, maybe you know best for your students more than your advisors or your coaches or your other administrators who are going to be kind of advising you on what to do next. So it's up to you to kind of prove you're the expert in the classroom. You're the person who's in the visionary of the content and how it should be taught. Having these multiple perspectives helps show what you know and then what is necessary, or it can, depending on how you create your surveys, which you should have some experience with after this week. Complete a self-reflection for each quarter, semester, or unit after it concludes. With that includes walkthrough feedback and student surveys, so that, I think I already read that one, sorry, so that you're able to justify what you've done, and also you can look at it from the perspective of you already providing feedback to yourself. So reflection is a part of our professional development. Having that already intact along with the feedback from parents and students is a great way to ensure that you have multiple voices and you have your own perspective already fleshed out after you're done with that unit or quarter. And then the last thing, tie everything together by connecting lessons, data from tests, activities with reflection, surveys, and other artifacts to the standards and professional growth goals set for you in the school. So when you try to make emphasis on why you did what you did, having the goals in mind is key, and having them already separated helps you with that process. Sorry, we have 2 more slides left, and then this lecture will be done. Now, after the shock of everything debrief, if you didn't have an opportunity to take care of yourself, do it prior to you start the action plan. Be sure to take notes during the observation on what is said and what is not said, or ask for an electronic version of the feedback that they state. Sometimes I've found that principals don't put everything in there. So they have this really long conversation with you that's elaborate with lots of details, and then they get back to their desk to fill in the notes, and then there's nothing there. So my advice to you would be to write down things as your evaluation is taking place. Then take a breath or two, come back to your actual plan that you already have, and then look at what changes you are going to make in response to what they say. So here are some questions for you to consider. Do you need to spend more time lesson planning? Do you need to work on your classroom management skills? Or does your ability to manage different types and levels of learners in your classroom need more work? So that would be in regards to differentiation, which we'll talk about in the next course. However, focus on how you're going to improve as a teacher moving forward. That is the main goal, which is what the article says, but I've already reiterated that. I just wanted to make sure that you knew the focus is that you just grow and that you continue to impact student learning in a great way. So don't take it personal, and even if it is personal, take a step back to kind of redirect your attention to what is most important. And incorporating the feedback and response to these questions into your reflective process would help you to gather perspective and continue to progress. The last thing mentioned in this series, I want you to make sure you remember that you are awesome, and I do mean it in the most sincere way. You're awesome, and you're courageous and daring, because you attempt to do what most people can't dream of. You are creating the society of tomorrow in the classroom of today. And that is a personal note for myself. That's something that I tell myself every single day. What an honor it is to create, to empower, to grow the future of your tomorrow, of our tomorrow. So regardless of what kind of evaluations you've received this year, regardless of what things that worked and didn't work, you were there to try. And there are a lot of people who do not, or who fail, or who walk away from the process. I never told you this, and I'll make it short. The reason why I'm returning to teaching is for this very reason. I believe in education like I believe in being a human being. I think that is very important, that if you're called to be an educator and that's what you do, that you do the job and you do it well. So I am returning because I knew that what I have to offer students, I was no longer offering to them, regardless of the system that I was a part of. I went to a really weird school that I didn't have a great experience with. It didn't mean that my obligation to students had changed. So this self-care is very important. Regardless of the outcome of your evaluations, please make sure you take care of yourself, like over the summer. A negative or unexpected evaluation result might feel bad, but make sure you remember to have a process in place that revives the very reason you became an educator. So I encourage you over the summer to revive yourself, because students need teachers who care. They also need teachers who are willing to consider their impact in the future. So I hope that this course gave you something that you can add to your processes that you already have, or a process that you needed to create. And I wish you well over the summer. If you are not continuing the next course, if you are, you will be hearing from me in a week, as I am busy getting things ready. Have a great rest of your day, and thank you so much for completing the course with me.